The bus rattled across the endless Texas plains, its windows streaked with dust in the heat of a July afternoon pressing in from all sides. Inside, 33 German women sat in silence, their uniforms faded, their faces drawn with exhaustion and uncertainty. For months, they had been prisoners, captured in the chaos of war, processed through the labyrinth of Allied camps, and now, finally, transported to a place none of them could have imagined, Camp Hereford, Texas. The name meant nothing to them, just another waypoint in a journey that had stripped them of everything familiar. But as the bus turned off the main road and bumped along a dirt track, something outside the window caught Greta Schneider's eye, a sight so unexpected, so utterly at odds with everything she thought she knew about America, that for a moment she forgot she was a prisoner at all. A man on horseback galloped across the open range, his silhouette framed by the blinding sun. He wore a wide-brimmed hat, leather chaps, and boots with spurs that flashed in the light. Behind him, more riders moved in perfect coordination, guiding a herd of cattle across the land with a skill that looked both ancient and effortless. Greta pressed her face to glass, her breath fogging the window. "Mein Gott," whispered Liesel Hoffman, the former Luftwaffe Communications officer beside her. "Are those cowboys? Real American cowboys, like in the films?" Greta shook her head, unable to answer. She had always assumed cowboys were a Hollywood invention, a relic of a bygone era, not something you actually saw in the modern world. Yet here they were, as real as the dust in her mouth and the ache in her bones. The bus slowed as it approached the camp gates, and the landscape unfolded like a scene from a movie. Vast open ranges stretching to the horizon, cattle grazing beneath the relentless sky, windmills turning lazily in the distance. Everywhere, men on horseback moved with a confidence that spoke of lifetime spent in the saddle. Greta's mind raced. This wasn't the America she had imagined. She had pictured cities, factories, the relentless march of modernity. But here, the past was alive, and it was riding a horse. As the bus came to a stop, a tall American sergeant stepped aboard, his accent thick, but his German careful. "Welcome to Texas, ladies," he announced. "You'll be working on ranches around here as part of the prisoner labor program. Hope you like horses, because you'll be seeing a lot of them." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Greta felt a surge of disbelief. Work on ranches? She had been a supply officer, trained in logistics and administration, not agriculture or animal husbandry. The idea of becoming a cowgirl seemed absurd, almost laughable. Yet as she looked out at the men riding across the fields, she realized that her life was about to change in ways she could not yet comprehend. The women were herded off the bus into the camp gates, their boots crunching on the dry earth. Through the fence, Greta watched as a group of German male prisoners struggled to rope a fence post under the watchful eye of a weathered American cowboy. The man demonstrated the technique with patient repetition, his movements economical and precise. The prisoners fumbled, laughed, cursing in German, but slowly they began to learn. Greta felt a strange mix of curiosity and dread. Was this really her future? Trading a uniform for jeans and boots, learning to ride and rope under the Texas sun? That night, as she lay in her bunk, the heat radiating through the barracks walls, Greta tried to make sense of it all. She had been captured in France, shipped across an ocean, and now found herself on the edge of the American frontier, about to become part of a world she had only seen in films. Outside, the sounds of cattle lowing and horses nickering drifted through the darkness. Somewhere a coyote howled, a sound she had always associated with Western movies, now suddenly real and immediate. The line between fantasy and reality blurred, and Greta wondered what other surprises Texas had in store. Dawn broke hot and bright over Camp Hereford. Greta and 11 other German women climbed into a ranch truck driven by a man who looked like he had stepped straight out of a Western. His skin was weathered, his shirt sun-bleached, his hat battered and wide. "Name's Jim Henderson," he said in a drawl so thick Greta struggled to follow. "Y'all are assigned to the Double H Ranch, my family's place. We run about 2,000 head of cattle on 50,000 acres. My sons and most of our regular hands are off fighting, so you're going to learn cowboy work whether you think you can or not." The drive to the ranch took 40 minutes, the landscape rolling past in waves of grass and mesquite. Greta watched Henderson's profile, trying to reconcile this real cowboy with the romanticized versions she had seen on screen. He was no actor. His hands were calloused, his eyes squinted from years in the sun. "Ever been on a horse?" he asked, glancing in the rearview mirror. Greta shook her head, speaking for the group. "No," Henderson grinned. "Well, you're to learn today. Can't work cattle in Texas without being able to ride. Don't worry, we'll start you on gentle horses and teach you proper. By the end of summer, you'll be able to saddle all day and rope a calf if needed." As the ranch house appeared on the horizon, a sprawling structure surrounded by corrals, barns, and bunkhouses, Greta felt a knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach. Cowboys moved through the yard, mending fences, working horses, managing cattle with a competence that was both intimidating and impressive. "These are the German girls?" an older cowboy asked, eyeing them with frank curiosity. "They look kind of delicate for ranch work." Henderson shrugged. "They'll toughen up. Germans are good workers once they learn what needs doing." Greta and the others were shown to a bunkhouse. Simple, clean, with wooden bunks and a window overlooking the main corral. The accommodations were basic, but the context was entirely new. They weren't in a prison camp anymore. They were on a working ranch, about to become part of a tradition that stretched back generations. As Greta changed into the jeans, boots, and hat provided for her, she caught a reflection in a small mirror. She looked ridiculous, like a child playing dress-up, but as she stepped outside and saw the other women similarly transformed, the absurdity faded into something closer to adventure. The first lesson began before the sun had fully cleared the horizon. Henderson stood by the corral fence, his arms folded, a faint smile playing at the corners of his mouth as he watched the German women approach. "Come meet your horses," he called. "These are good, gentle animals who will teach you to ride. Treat them with respect, and they'll take care of you." Greta hesitated, eyeing the chestnut mare Henderson indicated. The animal was large, powerful, and radiated a calm intelligence. Greta reached out, her hand trembling slightly, and the horse nuzzled her palm, searching for treats. The connection was immediate and startling. This was no machine, no tool to be mastered by force. This was a living partner, and Greta sensed that the rules she had learned in the military would not apply here. Maria, a weathered cowgirl with sun-browned skin and a voice like gravel, was assigned to teach the German women. She moved among them with easy authority, helping each one mount up, adjusting stirrups, checking cinches. "Relax your hips," she instructed Greta, who sat stiffly atop her horse, every muscle tense. "Horse can feel your tension. You got to move with the animal, not fight against it. Cowboys don't muscle their horses. They partner with them." Greta tried to follow the advice, but every instinct screamed to grip tightly, to maintain rigid control. The concept of relaxing while perched atop 1,000 pounds of moving muscle seemed counterintuitive, even dangerous. "You're thinking too much," Maria observed, riding alongside Greta with the casual ease of someone who had been in the saddle since childhood. "Stop being a German officer trying to control everything. Start being a cowgirl who trusts her horse." The advice was both practical and metaphorical. Greta's entire military training had emphasized control, precision, and strict adherence to procedure. Cowboy work, she was beginning to realize, required something different: flexibility, adaptation, and trust in partnership rather than dominance. After 2 hours of riding instruction, Henderson called a break and gathered the women around a corral where experienced cowboys were working cattle. "Watch how they move," he instructed. "See how horse and rider work is one unit? That's what you're aiming for. Takes most people years to get that good, but you can learn the basics in a few months if you work at it." The demonstration was mesmerizing. Cowboys cutting cattle from a herd moved with fluid precision that looked effortless, but clearly represented decades of practice. Horses responded to subtle cues, weight shifts, leg pressure, minimal rein contact, that created seamless communication between rider and mount. "Your German military probably emphasized obedience and control," Maria commented, watching Greta's fascinated expression. "Cowboy way is different. We train horses through partnership, not domination. Same with cattle. You guide them where you want them to go by understanding their nature, not by forcing them against their instincts." Greta frowned. That seems inefficient. Wouldn't direct control be more effective? Maria smiled knowingly. Try it and see. Spend a day trying to force a horse to do what you want versus a day partnering with the horse. You'll learn real quick which approach works better. The afternoon brought practical work, moving cattle from one pasture to another under the supervision of experienced cowboys. Greta found herself actually riding alongside the herd, her horse responding to her tentative cues, her body beginning to understand a rhythm of movement that made riding possible. "You're getting it," Maria called encouragingly. "See how your horse knows what to do? You just got to suggest direction and trust her to handle the details. Cowboys and their horses are teams, not commanders and subordinates." By evening, every muscle in Greta's body ached from hours in the saddle, but she successfully helped move 200 cattle to new grazing land. The achievement felt more real than any administrative work she had done in the Wehrmacht. Tangible, physical, connected to land and animals in ways her previous life had never been. At dinner in the ranch house, the German prisoners ate alongside American cowboys. The conversation was awkward at first, but the shared exhaustion of a hard day's work bridged the gap. Henderson nodded approvingly. "You ladies got grit. Thought some of you might quit after the morning, but you all stuck it out. That's what matters in ranch work. Persistence through discomfort. How long until we're actually useful?" Greta asked, her voice tinged with both hope and skepticism. Henderson shrugged. "You'll be doing real work within 2 weeks. Won't be expert cowboys, but you'll be competent enough to help with daily operations. We're desperate for labor, so we'll take whatever skill level you can reach." That night, Greta wrote in her journal, "Today I became a cowboy, or tried to. Everything about this is absurd. German Wehrmacht officer learning to ride horses and herd cattle in Texas under instruction from real American cowboys. But it's also oddly satisfying. Ranch work is hard but honest. No politics, no ideology, just practical skills applied to tangible problems. After years of military bureaucracy, there's something refreshing about work where success means cattle moved and fences mended rather than forms completed and orders followed." 3 weeks into ranch work, Greta could ride competently, wrote moderately well, and understood basic cattle management. The transformation from officer to working cowgirl was nearly complete, and she had developed genuine respect for the skills she had initially dismissed as primitive compared to modern German efficiency. "You're taking to this pretty natural," Maria observed during a cattle drive to summer pasture. "Thought German military types would be too rigid for cowboy work. But you've adapted well." "It required abandoning assumptions," Greta admitted, guiding her horse around a stubborn steer. "I thought modern America had moved past cowboys and ranching, that Western films were nostalgic fantasy. Learning that this lifestyle is real and requires genuine skills has been educational." "Lots of folks make that mistake," Maria replied. "They think because we got cities and factories, rural life must have disappeared. But ranching is still the foundation of Texas economy and culture. Cowboys aren't museum pieces. We're working professionals maintaining traditions because they work, not because they're quaint." The observation resonated with Greta. She had assumed German military efficiency was superior to American approaches, that German order and precision would naturally prevail over American informality. But cowboy methods, flexible, adaptive, based on partnership rather than control, were proving remarkably effective in contexts she had never considered. As the days passed, Greta's world expanded beyond anything she had known in Germany. The Texas sky seemed impossibly vast, the land stretching in every direction, dotted with cattle, mesquite trees, and the occasional windmill. The work was relentless. Early mornings, long hours in the saddle, the constant demand of animals and land. Yet, beneath the exhaustion, Greta felt a sense of purpose she had never experienced in the military. There was no room for pretense or hierarchy here. On the ranch, everyone's worth was measured by their willingness to work, to learn, and to endure. One afternoon, as the sun blazed overhead, Maria led Greta and the other German women to a shaded spot by a creek. "Time for a water break," she announced, swinging down from her horse with practiced ease. The women dismounted, grateful for the respite. Maria handed out canteens and surveyed the group. "You're all doing better than I expected," she said. "Most city folks can't handle ranch work, let alone people from halfway around the world." Liesl, wiping sweat from her brow, managed a tired smile. "We didn't have much choice. The alternative was sitting in a camp doing nothing. At least here, we're learning something useful." Maria nodded. "That's the spirit. Ranching's not just about muscle. It's about reading the land, understanding animals, and working together. Cowboys have always come from everywhere: Mexicans, Germans, Irish, black folks, Native Americans. What matters is whether you can do the work and respect the tradition." The conversation turned to the history of the ranch. Maria explained how her great-grandfather had come to Texas in the 1870s, learning cowboy skills from Mexican vaqueros who had been working cattle for generations. "It's a living tradition, not a historical reenactment," she said. "We pass down what works, and we adapt when we have to. That's how you survive out here." Greta listened, fascinated. The idea of knowledge passed down through apprenticeship, rather than formal training, was foreign to her. In the Wehrmacht, everything had been regimented, standardized, controlled. Here, learning happened through doing, by watching, by failing, by trying again. The cowboys corrected mistakes with a word or a gesture, never with anger or humiliation. The goal was competence, not perfection. As summer wore on, Greta's skills improved. She learned to rope cattle efficiently, to handle horses with growing confidence, to mend fences and manage grazing rotation. The physical labor toughened her body, while the work itself satisfied her in ways she had never expected. There was a directness to ranch life, a clarity of purpose that made even the hardest days feel worthwhile. One evening, after a long day moving cattle, Henderson called Greta aside. They stood by the corral fence, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. "You become a real hand," Henderson said, his tone approving. "Would you consider staying after the war? We'll need workers, and you've proven you can do the job. I'd be willing to sponsor your immigration if you wanted to remain in Texas." The offer stunned Greta. She had never imagined a future in America, let alone as a cowgirl on a Texas ranch. "I need time to think," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Henderson nodded. "Take all the time you need. War's going to end eventually. When it does, you'll have to decide whether to return to Germany or build a new life here. That's a choice a lot of prisoners are facing. Just know the option exists if you prove yourself worthy. And you have." That night, Greta sat on the bunkhouse porch, her journal open in her lap. The air was thick with the scent of hay and cattle, the sounds of the ranch settling for the night. She wrote, "Today, I was offered a future I never expected. To stay in Texas, to become part of this world. It's terrifying and thrilling in equal measure. I don't know what I'll choose, but I know I've changed. I'm not the person who arrived here months ago." As autumn approached, the work shifted. Calving season brought new challenges, helping cows through difficult births, caring for newborn calves, managing the new generation that would sustain the ranch. Greta found herself learning skills she had never imagined needing: animal husbandry, basic veterinary care, the rhythms of life and death that defined ranching. Henderson explained, "Cowboys are caretakers. We manage life cycles, tend animals, work with nature's rhythms. Modern people forget that someone has to do this work to keep society fed. Cowboys aren't romantic frontier figures. We're agricultural professionals maintaining the food supply." The perspective was eye-opening. Greta began to understand why ranching remained economically vital, not just a relic of the past. America's industrial might rested on an agricultural foundation, and cowboys were the ones who kept that foundation strong. Their work was modern and essential, not backward-looking nostalgia. As the year drew to a close, news from Europe filtered through the ranch. Germany's defeat seemed inevitable, the world Greta had known slipping further away with each passing day. The question of what to do after the war loomed larger: return to a devastated homeland, or stay in a place that had become unexpectedly meaningful. Greta wasn't alone in her dilemma. Around the bunkhouse, similar conversations unfolded. Of the 12 German women assigned to the WWII ranch, 8 were seriously considering staying in America if given the chance. Maria, sensing Greta's uncertainty, offered her own perspective. Home isn't just geography, she said one evening as they watched the stars emerge over prairie. It's where you belong and can build a meaningful life. If Texas ranching gives you that, choosing it over returning to devastation isn't abandonment. It's survival and growth. The words lingered with Greta. She realized that the war had stripped away not just her country, but her sense of identity. On the ranch, she was judged not by her nationality, but by her willingness to work, to learn, to contribute. The transformation was profound. She was no longer just a German officer or a prisoner. She was becoming something new, a cowgirl, a ranch hand, a part of a tradition that welcomed anyone willing to earn their place. Winter arrived in Texas with a chill that surprised Greta. She had expected endless heat, but the wind that swept across the plains could cut through even the thickest coat. The work did not slow. If anything, it became more demanding. Calves needed extra care. Fences had to be checked and repaired, and the days grew shorter, making every hour of daylight precious. Greta found herself rising before dawn, her breath visible in the cold air as she saddled her horse. The routine was grueling, but it brought a sense of accomplishment that was new to her. Each day, she grew more confident, more skilled, more at home in a world she had once thought was pure fiction. The ranchers and cowboys, too, began to see the German women in a new light. At first, there had been skepticism, even resentment. Some locals grumbled about enemy prisoners working on Texas land, questioning whether they could be trusted. But as the weeks passed, the women proved themselves through hard work and determination. They learned quickly, adapted to the demands of ranch life, and showed a willingness to do whatever was needed. Gradually, suspicion gave way to respect. The cowboys who had once watched them with wary eyes now offered advice, shared stories, and even joked with them around the campfire. One afternoon, as Greta helped Maria deliver a calf during a difficult birth, she realized how much she had changed. The work was messy, exhausting, and at times heartbreaking, but it was also deeply rewarding. When the calf finally took its first shaky steps, Greta felt a surge of pride. She had helped bring new life into the world, a far cry from the destruction and loss that had defined her recent years. Maria clapped her on the back. "You're a real hand now," she said. "Not just because you can ride or rope, but because you care about the work and the animals. That's what makes a cowboy." The sense of community on the ranch was unlike anything Greta had experienced before. Meals were shared, chores divided, and everyone looked out for one another. There was a rough equality here. No one was above the work, and everyone's contribution mattered. Greta found herself forming friendships with people she would never have met in her old life. She learned to appreciate the quiet wisdom of the older cowboys, the playful teasing of the younger hands, and the unspoken bond that came from facing hardship together. As Christmas approached, the ranchers organized a small celebration. There was music, laughter, and even a few gifts exchanged. Greta received a pair of well-worn gloves from Henderson, a practical but meaningful gesture. "You've earned these," he said simply. The moment was bittersweet. Greta thought of her family in Germany, of the friends she had lost, and of the uncertain future that awaited her. But she also felt a sense of belonging she had never known before. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to hope. The new year brought news of Germany's defeat at the Battle of the Bulge. The end of the war was now a matter of months, not years. The mood on the ranch was somber. Some of the German women worried about what would happen to them. When the fighting stopped, would they be sent back to a ruined homeland? Or would they be allowed to stay in the only place that now felt like home? Henderson tried to reassure them. "You've proven yourselves," he said. "If you want to stay, I'll do what I can to help. Good hands are hard to find, and you've all become part of this ranch." The prospect of staying in Texas became a topic of nightly discussion in the bunkhouse. Greta weighed her options carefully. Returning to Germany meant facing a country in ruins, a society that might judge her harshly for surviving captivity. Staying in Texas meant embracing a new identity, one built on hard work, resilience, and a willingness to adapt. The choice was not easy, but the more Greta thought about it, the more she realized that her old life was gone. The war had changed everything, and she had changed with it. Spring arrived, bringing with it a sense of renewal. The land turned green, calves grew strong, and the ranch bustled with activity. Greta threw herself into the work, determined to prove that she belonged. She took on more responsibility, helping to train new hands, managing grazing rotations, and even leading small crews during cattle drives. Her confidence grew, and with it, the respect of those around her. One day, as she rode out to check a distant fence line, Greta paused to take in a view. The sky was a brilliant blue, the grass swayed in the breeze, and the cattle grazed peacefully. She felt a deep sense of gratitude for the second chance she had been given. The journey from prisoner to cowgirl had been long and difficult, but it had also been transformative. She had discovered strengths she never knew she possessed, and she had found a place where she could build a future. As the war in Europe drew to a close, the question of what to do next became urgent. Henderson called a meeting with the German women, explaining the process for applying for immigration sponsorship. "It won't be easy," he warned. "There's paperwork, interviews, and not everyone will be approved. But if you want to stay, I'll vouch for you. You've earned that much." Greta made her decision. She would apply to stay in Texas, to continue the life she had built on the ranch. The thought of return to Germany no longer held any appeal. Her home was here, among the people who had accepted her, the land that had challenged her, and the work that had given her purpose. She filled out the forms, gathered the necessary documents, and waited anxiously for news. The weeks dragged on, each day filled with uncertainty. But Greta refused to let fear control her. She focused on the work, on the routines that had become second nature, and on the friendships that had sustained her through the hardest times. When the news finally came, her application had been approved. She felt a wave of relief and joy. She was no longer a prisoner, no longer an outsider. She was a Texan, a cowgirl, and a valued member of the ranching community. The transition from prisoner to immigrant was not without its challenges. Greta quickly learned that freedom brought its own set of difficulties. Some local Texans still viewed the German women with suspicion, unable to forget the war or the losses they had suffered. There were whispers in town, sideways glances at the general store, and the occasional cold shoulder at community gatherings. Greta understood the resentment, even if it stung. She had not chosen the war, nor had she wanted to be an enemy, but she carried the weight of her nationality everywhere she went. Henderson, ever the pragmatist, offered advice that Greta took to heart. "You can't change where you came from," he told her one evening as they repaired a section of fence together. "But you can show people who you are now. Work hard, be honest, and let your actions speak for you. Most folks will come around, and those who don't, well, you can't please everyone." Greta nodded, grateful for his support. She resolved to prove herself through her work and her character, just as she had on the ranch. Over time, the community's attitude began to shift. Greta's skill with cattle became well known, and her willingness to help neighbors in need earned her respect. She volunteered at local events, joined the church choir, and even taught a few children how to ride. Slowly, the label of German prisoner faded, replaced by Miss Greta, the hard-working cowgirl who could rope a calf as well as any man in the county. The years passed, and Greta's life settled into a rhythm. She married John Henderson, Jim's younger son, in a small ceremony attended by both ranchers and former prisoners. The wedding was a symbol of reconciliation, a testament to the power of forgiveness and the possibility of new beginnings. Greta became a mother, raising children who were as comfortable in the saddle as they were in the classroom. Her German accent softened but never disappeared, a reminder of the journey she had taken and the world she had bridged. As the 1950s dawned, Greta found herself teaching a new generation of Texans the skills she had once struggled to learn. She showed her children and their friends how to read the land, how to move with a horse, how to work cattle with patience and respect. She emphasized the importance of partnership between rider and horse, between cowboy and land, between neighbors and the community. "Cowboys don't just react," she would say. "They read animal behavior and position themselves accordingly. It's a partnership between human intuition and livestock instinct." Her reputation grew beyond the ranch. Local ranchers sought her advice on cattle management, and her opinions carried weight at association meetings. Greta's story became part of local lore, the German officer who had become a Texas cowgirl, the outsider who had earned her place through grit and determination. She was invited to speak at schools, to share her experiences with students who listened in awe as she described her first days in Texas, her struggles to adapt, and the lessons she had learned along the way. Despite her success, Greta never forgot the hardships she had faced. She remembered the fear and uncertainty of her early days on a ranch, the pain of being judged for things beyond her control, and the effort it had taken to build a new life from nothing. She used those memories to help others, new immigrants, struggling neighbors, anyone who needed a hand. Her empathy became one of her greatest strengths, allowing her to connect with people from all walks of life. One summer evening, as she sat on the porch watching her children practice roping in the fading light, Greta reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She thought of the bus ride across the Texas plains, the shock of seeing real cowboys for the first time, the long hours in the saddle, and the friendships that had sustained her. She realized that her story was not just about survival, but about transformation. She had been given a second chance, and she had made the most of it. The ranch itself had changed, too. The influx of German workers during the war had left a lasting mark. Some had returned to Europe, but many, like Greta, had stayed, marrying into local families and becoming part of the community. The traditions of Texas ranching were enriched by new perspectives, new skills, and new stories. The children of former prisoners and local ranchers grew up together, learning from both worlds and forging a future that honored the past while embracing change. Greta's marriage to John was a partnership in every sense. They worked side by side, raising cattle, mending fences, and weathering the ups and downs of ranch life. They faced droughts, floods, and the ever-present uncertainty of the market, but they faced it together. Their home was filled with laughter, music, and the smells of good food. Greta taught her children to be proud of their heritage, both German and Texan, and to value hard work, honesty, and kindness above all else. As the years rolled on, Greta became a mentor to younger women on the ranch. She encouraged them to take on roles traditionally reserved for men, to learn every aspect of the work, and to believe in their own abilities. She saw in them the same uncertainty she had once felt, and she offered the same support and guidance that Maria and Henderson had given her. "You belong here," she would tell them, "not because of where you were born, but because of what you do and who you choose to become." Looking back, Greta marveled at the twist of fate that had brought her to Texas. She had arrived as a prisoner, expecting hardship and humiliation, but had found acceptance, purpose, and love. Her journey was a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the power of community, and the enduring appeal of the cowboy way of life. She knew that her story was unique, but she also knew that it was part of a larger tradition, one that welcomed anyone willing to work hard, learn, and respect the land. Years passed, and the world changed around Greta, but the rhythms of ranch life remained constant. The seasons turned, calves were born and raised, and the land demanded the same respect and hard work it always had. Greta's children grew up strong and capable, inheriting both her German determination and the easy confidence of Texas cowhands. They learned to ride before they could read, their laughter echoing across the fields as they raced their ponies under the endless sky. Greta watched them with pride, knowing that their lives were built on the foundation she had fought so hard to create. The ranch prospered, weathering the storms of drought and economic uncertainty. Greta and John expanded their herd, improved their pastures, and invested in new equipment. Yet, for all the changes, the heart of the ranch remained the same, a place where tradition and innovation coexisted, where newcomers were welcomed if they were willing to work, and where the lessons of the past shaped the promise of the future. Greta's story became a touchstone for the community, a reminder that resilience and openness could turn even the most unlikely circumstances into opportunity. As the 1960s dawned, Greta found herself in a new role, teacher and mentor to the next generation. Young ranchers, both boys and girls, came to her for advice on everything from cattle management to handling the challenges of rural life. She taught them not just the technical skills of ranching, but the values that had sustained her: perseverance, humility, and the importance of partnership. "A good cowboy," she would say, "knows when to lead and when to listen. The land, the animals, and the people around you all have something to teach if you're willing to pay attention." Her influence extended beyond the ranch. Greta was invited to speak at local schools and community events, sharing her story with audiences who listened in fascination. She spoke of her journey from German officer to Texas cowgirl, of the shock and wonder she had felt seeing real cowboys for the first time, and the lessons she had learned about adaptation and acceptance. Her message resonated with people from all walks of life, especially those who felt like outsiders or who faced their own struggles to belong. Despite her success, Greta never forgot the challenges she had faced as an immigrant and former prisoner. She remained sensitive to the struggles of others, reaching out to new arrivals in the community and offering support and friendship. She encouraged her children to be open-minded and compassionate, to judge people by their actions rather than their origins. The ranch became a place where diversity was celebrated, where stories from Germany, Texas, and beyond mingled around the dinner table, enriching the lives of everyone who called it home. As the years went by, Greta's legacy grew. Her children took on more responsibility at the ranch, and her grandchildren learned to ride and rope under her watchful eye. The traditions she had embraced and helped to preserve were passed down, not as rigid rules, but as living practices that could adapt to changing times. Greta took pride in seeing her family and community thrive, knowing that her journey had helped to shape a better future for those who came after her. One evening, as the sun sent a blaze of color over the Texas plains, Greta sat on the porch with John, reflecting on the life they had built together. The air was filled with the sounds of cattle settling for night, the distant laughter of their grandchildren, and the gentle strumming of a guitar from the bunkhouse. Greta felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that she had found her place in the world. She had come to Texas as a stranger, a prisoner, and an outsider, but she had been transformed by the land, the people, and the work. She had become a cowgirl, a rancher, and a respected member of her community. Looking back, Greta understood that her story was not just about survival, but about transformation and belonging. She had learned that real cowboys were not just figures from Hollywood films, but living, breathing people who embodied resilience, skill, and a deep connection to the land. She had discovered that home was not defined by geography or nationality, but by the relationships and purpose one built through honest work and mutual respect. As twilight deepened, Greta's thoughts turned to the future. She knew that challenges would come, as they always did, but she faced them with a confidence born of experience. She hoped that her story would inspire others to embrace change, to seek out new opportunities, and to find strength in community. The lessons she had learned on the Texas plains, about partnership, perseverance, and the power of acceptance, were gifts she hoped to pass on to generations yet to come. In the end, Greta's journey was a testament to the enduring spirit of the American West and the universal human capacity for growth and renewal. She had arrived in Texas as a prisoner, shocked to see real cowboys riding horses across the open range. She had become one of them, her life woven into the fabric of tradition that welcomed all who were willing to learn and contribute. Greta's story was proof that even in the most unlikely circumstances, it is possible to find purpose, belonging, and a place to call home.